Marvin Gaye's family is finally confirming Gaye's last words before he tragically passed on the 1st of April, 1984. And you're not gonna believe all the things he said to his own brother as he lay on death's door that cold Sunday morning. But grab a seat and let's talk about it. From enduring years of beatings from one of the strictest fathers in history to eventually dying at the hands of the same father, Marvin Gaye, who was also known as the Prince of Motown, had one of the roughest childhoods, and even after he made it to the top in his career, he still found himself crashing down. Marvin Gaye struggled with a lot of addictions during his lifetime, but none of it compared to the struggles he faced at the hands of his father, whom he considered a cruel king.
In fact, the last 7 years of my life haven't been exactly ecstatic for me. I haven't been ecstatic. I've been happy and somewhat, most of the time, pretty depressed. But my depression is, I think, because of my empathy for humanity and my feelings for the world and things. And I'm awfully upset when I have to do things to achieve a certain amount of status so that I might be able to do something else so that people will listen to me. So if I have to do so they can listen to social topics that might be viable, sex first.
It gets them into the tent.
Perhaps, maybe not.
Just for some context, Gaye's father was a preacher in a Pentecostal church, and his mother was a domestic worker in Washington, D.C. In the early days of their lives, Marvin Gaye would sing at his father's church while his father played the piano. His father hated anything that seemed worldly, whether it was his daughters wearing makeup or them listening to secular music. However, Marvin would later toe that road and make his father hate him even more. Marvin had 5 siblings, 2 girls, his brother Frankie, and 2 half-brothers, one from his mother's previous relationship and the other from his father's extramarital affair. However, Marvin Gaye Sr. refused to have his wife's son living with them, claiming he couldn't house another man's child. According to Gaye, he and his siblings often got whooped by their father whenever he would ask them about a Bible passage and they couldn't answer. However, Gaye, who was the second child, got the most beatings, and this caused a rift in his relationship with his father. For the most part, Gaye felt his father hated him, and to make it worse, they both shared the same name. This led to Gaye later adding the letter E to his name. During Gaye's teenage years, he shared that his father kicked him out of the house quite often, and if not for the love of his mother, he would have self-destructed. But this didn't mean Gaye's mother was spared from her husband's temper. In an interview, Marvin Gaye once said, "It wasn't simply that my father beat me, though that was bad enough. By the time I was 12, there wasn't an inch on my body that hadn't been bruised and beaten by him." In the midst of all this abuse, music was where Gaye found all the solace he needed. Soon afterward, Gaye joined Motown and started making hit songs. When Gaye got into high school, he began exploring other kinds of music, and soon he developed a love for R&B and doo-wop. That was the beginning of his career. However, before Gaye got fully launched into the music industry, he served in the military for a while. But the life there was so difficult that he had to pretend to be mentally ill just so he could be discharged. It was after he left the military that he went full on into singing, and Marvin Gaye's fame soon spread. Before he knew what was happening, he and the group's founder, Harvey Fuqua, came to the attention of Berry Gordy Jr., and the duo got signed to Gordy's legendary Motown Records. Before Gaye eventually broke into the top 40 with his solo single, Hitchhike, in 1962, he worked as a drummer for Motown legends like Stevie Wonder and the Supremes. But Gaye knew that he was always meant for more. After the success of Hitchhike, Gaye continued releasing more solo tracks and romantic duets with celebrities like Diana Ross and Mary Wells. For months on end, Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell stunned the whole country with their duet performances of Ain't No Mountain High Enough and If I Could Build My Whole World Around You. During a live performance in Farmville in 1967, Tammy Terrell collapsed in Marvin's arms. When she was rushed to the hospital, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor and later passed away in 1970. This tragedy hit Gaye so hard that he became a shadow of of himself and even swore never to partner with another female vocalist again. The effect of Tammy Terrell's demise was so strong on Marvin that he briefly explored other career options such as football, but Marvin was eventually turned down in his quest, bringing him back to music. As the years went by, Marvin Gaye explored other areas of music and was said to have branched out artistically. According to sources, this bold move would later pave the way for artists like Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder to do the same. Now, as great as Marvin Gaye's career was, not every part of his life was perfect, especially his relationship life. Marvin Gaye got married twice, but both marriages ended in divorce. Afterwards, Gaye concluded that love was misery and he was just gonna stick to casual relationships. Marvin's first marriage was in 1963 to Anna Gordy, and together they adopted a son. However, Marvin was so restless in the marriage that he eventually moved to Los Angeles in 1972. In 1975, however, Anna Gordy filed for divorce, likely after discovering that Marvin was having an affair. This marked the beginning of Marvin's financial troubles because he was reportedly spending recklessly just to avoid Anna taking all his money. During this time, Marvin had already met 17-year-old Janice Hunter through her mother, and they began dating. However, due to Janice's age and concerns about what fans might think, Marvin kept their relationship under wraps. Janice's school was close to where Marvin lived, so he would often pick her up from school and take her back. By this time, the two were already living together, and Janice made sure she was everything Anna wasn't to Marvin. The two eventually got married despite the 17-year age gap between them, which was also the same age gap between Marvin and his first wife. A few months after meeting Janice, Marvin released the song Let's Get It On, which later became #1 on the Billboard charts and was regarded as one of the most popular love anthems of its time. In her memoir After the Dance, My Life with Marvin Gaye, Janice Hunter talked about the kind of life she lived with the superstar. Whenever they weren't doing drugs in his house, they were making love, and her mother had encouraged her to explore her sexuality early in life. But there's more. According to Janice, Marvin became almost obsessed with her, and after a while, it turned into paranoia, as Marvin was always on the lookout to see if Janice had betrayed him. However, Janice revealed that things began to change between her and Marvin after she got pregnant. The first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage, the second was a girl, but somehow she felt Marvin was disappointed it wasn't a boy. Later on, they had a boy, whom they named Frankie, but Janice felt Marvin no longer loved her because of how much her body had changed, which led her to hitting the gym. Janice also revealed that she later had affairs with two of Marvin's competitors, which led to a messy divorce in 1981, just 4 years after their marriage. It was a tough time for Marvin mentally and emotionally, and to make it worse, he started suffering financially due to the alimony payments he had to make to his first wife after their divorce. Let's not forget, Marvin Gaye was also battling drug addiction during this period. At some point, Marvin fell behind in his payments, and that was when he filed for bankruptcy in 1976, which was a year before he and Janice got divorced. Now, in order to keep up with the payments he had to make to Anna Gordy, he promised to pay her all the royalties from his next album titled Here, My Dear. During this period, Marvin was so broken inside that he considered taking his own life on multiple occasions. On one of those occasions, he tried overdosing on cocaine.
I read in an article that you once seriously thought or tried to commit suicide.
Well, yeah, I was a manic depressant. I was at my lowest ebb. I really didn't feel like I was loved, and because I didn't feel loved, I felt useless.
However, things took a turning point for Marvin when his next record, Midnight Love, which featured the song Sexual Healing, sold over 2 million copies in the United States and gave him a huge financial comeback. The song also won Marvin his first 2 Grammy Awards, but his happiness from all of that was short-lived. In Janice's memoir, she talked about how Marvin battled with lots of anxiety and self-doubt during those times. So, even though Marvin was now coming back financially, financially, his mental health problems were intensifying, and so was his drug use. Marvin was very open about his mental health struggles and how he battled with paranoia. To make it worse, Marvin was receiving death threats during that time, but according to sources, it wasn't unusual for someone of Marvin's status in the industry to have been getting those kinds of messages. In 1983, just a year before Marvin's demise, he wore a bulletproof vest for his tour because he had completely spiraled into paranoia. He even hired bodyguards who carried loaded guns around because he felt someone was out to get him. Things got so bad that at some point, Marvin called a press conference telling his fans that he was being stalked and to avoid getting poisoned. Marvin would have his sister bring water for him on stage. He also hired a lawyer to look into the fact that he had previously been poisoned. In the last months of his life, he would ask his limo drivers to drive in circles so they could throw off an unseen pursuer. And here's where things take a wild turn. Marvin sent his father a gun, which his father reluctantly accepted. Now, it was a surprise to many that despite all the accolades and awards Marvin had received the year before, his life was still a roller coaster. During that year, while on tour, Marvin was always so exhausted and reportedly felt like each tour was going to be his last. Eventually, he landed in the hospital due to exhaustion, and that was when he returned home to be with his father and mother. But in many ways, it feels like Marvin knew that would be his end. Now, Marvin was back under the same roof with his father, who couldn't stand him, and vice versa. But here's the thing, even with the religious cloak that Marvin's father always put on, he had a lot of dark secrets. For one, he was an alcoholic and a closeted cross-dresser. But that wasn't all. He had also stepped out of his marriage. For so many reasons, a lot of people believed that Mr. Gaye Sr. was jealous of his own son. Marvin, on the other hand, didn't stop doing drugs when he got back home. In fact, each time he would tell his mother that it was the last time, but he couldn't help it. Now, while at home, the thought of taking his life continued to hover over Marvin's head, and he would stare at a gun for hours. Marvin also tried to fill the void he felt by getting into another relationship with a woman named Deborah Derrick, but he wasn't head over heels for her, as he had a lot of women coming in and out of the house. So, not only was Marvin addicted to drugs, but he was also addict. Deborah Derrick later got pregnant by Marvin, but reportedly miscarried due to the strong tension in the Gaye household. Just a few days before Gaye was tragically shot, he tried taking his life again by jumping out of a racing sports car, but he managed to walk out alive with some injuries. Now, the day of Marvin's demise was just like every other heated day in the Gaye household. Mr. Gaye was angrily prancing around the house, looking for an insurance letter and shouting at his wife, who was tending to Marvin. Marvin came to his mother's defense, but that only angered his father more. The argument quickly turned physical, and that was when Mr. Gaye went to retrieve his gun. He returned and shot his son twice in the chest with the same gun Marvin had given him months earlier. According to Frankie Gaye, the last thing Marvin said as he laid in his pool of blood was that he had his father shoot him because he couldn't do it himself. In Mr. Gaye's defense, he claimed he thought the gun was filled with BBs and didn't realize it was actually loaded. Marvin tragically passed away just a day before his 45th birthday, and Mr. Gaye was arrested and charged with manslaughter. However, Mr. Gaye was later diagnosed with a brain tumor and was moved to a nursing home where he eventually passed away. Marvin's demise was incredibly tragic, but his family told sources that Marvin knew if he ever laid hands on his father would become irrational and take his life. But y'all, what do you think about how Marvin's life ultimately ended? Do you think Marvin planned his own demise? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to drop a like on this video and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on more stories about your favorite celebrities.